The Chicago Bulls and Josh Giddey finally came to terms on a new deal that's going to keep him here for 4 years at $100 million over the course of the contract. But in today's episode, not only are we going to look at the deal and the negotiations, now where does that set the Chicago Bulls up financially, both for the remainder of this season and for next season, as next summer is going to be a big summer for the Chicago Bulls. We're going to talk about that, plus a Bulls new signing to an Exhibit 10 deal. Talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And we got a lot to talk about here. The Chicago Bulls finally came to terms on a new contract with Josh Giddey, and this is the thing that has been the last overarching thing for this offseason for the Chicago Bulls. They've now come to terms with the Bulls, which brings the Bulls offseason basically to a close finally. And when you look at it right now, the moves that the Chicago Bulls made this offseason were, of course, signing Trey Jones to a 3-year deal contract, which is good, drafting Noah Essengay, who has tremendous upside there at number 11, and trading Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro. And that is, and when you add Josh Giddey signing to that, that's what the Bulls offseason has been. And so it's an offseason where things stay relatively the same for the Chicago Bulls. Now, for what it's worth, the Bulls do have $84 million in expiring contracts. And while that could leave them room to be a third team in a trade, to get involved in something like that, sending out some expiring deals, we know that that's not necessarily the most likely for the Bulls with how they've done things in the past. But, that option is there. But it does leave them tons of flexibility with their cap space at the end of the season. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about in this. But the saga to get Josh Giddey here to a deal had just went on so much longer than what it really needed to go on to. When you look at it, they negotiated for 70 days to ultimately come to a deal that was right in between the middle of what both sides wanted. And as any kid on the playground would know, the first thing that you do is let's split it down the middle. Like that should have been the negotiation. And I get it. You had the Bulls using their leverage to try to see if they could get Josh Giddey to sign for closer to the $20 million. We heard the 4-year, $22 million a year offer. Josh Giddey ends up not going for that, and he ends up getting a deal that's much closer to what he wanted, that $25 million a year. And listen, I know there are going to be some people that make this be some drastic overpay, and it's not. It's not. It's starting caliber point guard money. That's what that is. Regardless of how you look at it, that is starting caliber point guard money. And with Josh Giddey being 22 years old and still having a lot to still show that he has in his game, right, and has a lot of growth that he can still do, absolutely. And I know while some Josh Giddey fans make a lot about, oh my God, he was in a category with only LeBron and Jokic. It's like, okay, yeah, that's cool, right? But you need to see Josh Giddey and what he's going to be as a starting point guard for the entirety of a season. And that's what we're going to get to see this season. And I tell you this, like I said it multiple times, people who try to act like Josh Giddey only played well over the last 20 games or so of the season, no, that's when his offense exploded. If you go and look at his playmaking, if you go and look at his assist numbers, when you go and look at the efficiency that the players that he did assist played with when he was on the court, it was more than just the last 20 games of the season. He was playing actual point guard earlier in the season because you had Coby, Vooch, and Zach LaVine all scoring above him. Now you're coming into a season where Coby White's the number one scorer. Josh Giddey's going to be managing and operating that offense, but his ability to create off drives is going to be more relied on than ever before. Now, if Modest takes a step offensively, that's maybe can ease off some of the offensive scoring responsibility off Josh Giddey, and that's fine. Josh Giddey will probably be one of the first ones to tell you that it shouldn't have to score a lot. And I think a good stat line for Josh Giddey this season, personally, is between 17 and 18 points per game and 8 and 8. And if he can do that, that's more than worthy of that contract. Actually, that would make that contract a bit of an underpay if he did that consistently over the total 4 years of this contract. And that's just my personal opinion on it. They got the deal done. They wanted to get the deal done. They wanted Josh Giddey here. We've heard that him being referred to as a foundational piece and all this other stuff over the course of this year. They wanted Josh Giddey here in the building. And while there are going to be some naysayers and whatever else it is, some people that are pessimistic, like I've said before, I said this with Caleb Williams. I'm going to say this as well with Josh Giddey. I'm not comparing them as players, but I'd say this. It's up to Josh Giddey to quiet those guys. Now, if Josh Giddey has a full season where he's playing well for the entirety of the season and people still are hating at that point, they're just haters. There's going to be nothing that's going to turn their heads at that point in time. But if he's here performing well and he's playing in his role well, and I think people put things on Josh Giddey that he's never meant to be. People are like, well, if he can't alone get you to – Josh Giddey will tell you first, he's not a superstar. Not yet. There's a lot that needs to get there before you can be a star or superstar. And part of that is consistency, right? It's not having a flash in the pan, but he's not you didn't pay him. He's not getting paid money of the type of player that alone by their presence can get you like $30 million, $25 million isn't like, it's like people are stuck in like 12-year-ago mind frames. It's not the money anymore that you look at and you're saying, oh my God, you make or break the playoffs is just by this player. No, you still need to craft a well-organized team. And that's what you need to do in this. And this gives the Bulls a point guard who can run their system at the high level that they need to the style of play that they want to play. Josh Giddey is that. That is literally where Josh Giddey's strengths lie in, is his ability to play in an up-tempo style. Now, he can also play make in the half court. Absolutely, right? And so when things slow down, if you have the right proper system where players are moving off the ball, cutting to the rim with Josh Giddey's height at that point guard position, he's going to be able, but I shouldn't even have to say this, right? If people were objectively looking at basketball, these are conversations that shouldn't necessarily have to happen. Now, one that is an object is that he's going to have to prove what he can do here in a Bulls uniform for the entirety of a season. That's fair, right? But to act like you haven't seen things that already show that Josh Giddey is a good NBA player, then I don't know what to tell you guys. Like at this point, it is what it is. People get too caught up in how things ended in OKC and don't look at the actual situation that he was in, B, the entirety of what he did while he was there in OKC. And that's why people are like, oh, well, you can't just pay him based off 20 games. Nobody is paying him just based off 20 games. And if you think that, I've said this before and I'm going to maintain this, you're foolish. If you literally think that this contract is just based off 20 games, then you're too lost in the sauce. No conversation reasonably is going to get you to the place where you need to be as a functioning adult, because it's just not going to be there, right? But this does now lead the Bulls to saying they got Josh Giddey locked in. And a legitimate question now is the backcourt of Josh Giddey and Coby White, where does that get you? And that's what's going to have to be told over the course of the season, and thus lies in the next set of situations that we're in. This now puts the Bulls in an interesting situation, both cap-wise and with Coby White. But let's first talk about where the Bulls are now cap-wise, right? The Chicago Bulls now sit, their salary is going to be $175 million, right? The first apron is $195 million. So roughly, the Chicago Bulls are projected to have between $20 and $21 million beneath the first tax apron. And that's where they sit right now. They've hard capped themselves, so that is their hard cap right there. They have hard capped themselves. And what does that do for the Bulls, right? Now, while it does not seem like the Bulls are going to really be, there's nobody else left to sign. They do have their full mid-level exception that they can give, but here's the thing that I want to tell you guys, is that the Bulls having $83-ish million in expiring salary and having $21 million beneath the first tax apron, what does that do? That makes the Bulls a prime destination if they want to absorb salary. Now, the Bulls have shown no inclination that that's kind of where they want to go with their cap space. But if the Bulls did, let's say that there was a team that wanted to do and they needed to dump off some salary to a team. The Bulls not only have the expiring money to get it done, they have the space still under the first tax apron where they can legitimately be a team that can absorb some bad salary and add draft picks to doing that. Now, what is AK's risk tolerance to doing that? It doesn't seem like he's the type of GM that wants to do that via how he's operated the Bulls since he's been here, but it is something to look at. But let's move on from that. What else does that give the Bulls? If this team is a team that is competing, and I have this as a team that can, fight and compete to be above 500 this season. If that ends up holding true and they do go above 500 or at 500 or above this season and they're on that pace, at the buyout market, the Bulls can be a big player in the buyout market. They have their full mid-level exception. They still have their biannual exception as well. The Bulls have a lot of tools at their disposal. They have $14 million of a non-taxpayer mid-level exception. They have $5 million of a biannual exception. They have $17 million in a trade exception, another $2.9 million trade exception, and they have a vet minimum of a vet minimum contract that they can offer to any player. Again, they would have to create the open roster spot to get that done. But this makes the Chicago Bulls this season one of the teams that during the season has the most assets available. Now, I know it's a lot of reason for pessimism. The Bulls have let trade exceptions expire. They've let mid-level exceptions go unused. They've let biannual exceptions go unused. They have been a front office that has allowed things that can improve your team go unused because of they try to avoid that first tax apron, right? They do not avoid going into the luxury tax. Now, I will say this, though. The one thing that could make this season different for the Chicago Bulls is the fact that, let's say their $17 million trade exception, because they are $21 million below the first tax apron, below the luxury tax, that means that they can use that to absorb that whole salary and not have to match it and still be under the luxury tax. So if any year AK does not have an excuse of the luxury tax, that's this year. We'll see if he ends up using it. But again, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to make this episode so much so of the episode that's based off talking about where the Bulls are salary-wise right now, because I don't think, y'all, we've ever seen the Bulls be in this type of situation financially. Nowhere close to the luxury tax. Trade exceptions, mid-level exceptions, biannual exceptions that they can all use. If this team really does want to be aggressive about going out there and making a move for a player that's out there in the market, this is one of the best years that they have to do that. They have 8 first-round picks incoming. 5 of those first-round picks are tradable. They have 5 future second-round picks that are also movable. This team has the assets to get things done. They have expiring deals, so that way if they do have to make a trade with the team and the team's more so focused on the future first, they don't have to take back long-term salary. They got young players as well in Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, those type of players that they can include in trades if a team is moving off a player and wants a young player that they can boast as, all right, we're going to see if we can develop this player. They got proven veterans in Kevin Huerter and Zach Collins. This team has players and has assets. And in a way, I'm not going to lie to you guys, this may be the most disappointed that I could be in the Chicago Bulls if they allow this transactional period to go through and not do anything. Now, it is what it is. I'm telling you guys that it's still most likely than not that they aren't going to do anything because this is the Chicago Bulls. This is the same Bulls that we've watched and rooted for years. There's no reason to really think things are going to drastically change for this team now. But this team has assets and it has a position to where they can legitimately make moves to improve this team. And they've done that with locking in Josh Giddey, with having Modest Buzelis, Noah Essengay, and rookie scale deals. They still have more than enough room to sign Ayo Dosunmu and Coby White if they see those players as part of their core. This is not the year for excuses for AK to get shit done. So if a young player does become available, if, and they want to make a shot at that rim protecting center, they can do that. If they want to get in and get a wing in here that is more a defensive 3-and-D guy that they think is a more premier 3-and-D guy to be there as the 3 next to Coby White and Josh Giddey, they have the assets to go out and get that done. Now, I want to temper the expectations again to say that more than likely this team's going to wait to the offseason to do anything like that, but they do have that, which then brings us to our next topic. Let's get to the summer of 2026 and how this now has set up the Bulls for the summer of 2026. After Josh Giddey's deal, it leaves the Bulls with a projected cap space right now of $122 million next season that they can get to work with and have the most cap space in the league. That allows them to, if they were to sign Coby White to that $30 million a year deal, they would still have $90 million to work with. If you didn't sign Ayo Dosunmu to an $18 to $20 million deal, you're still looking at that point of $70 million to work with 9 players under contract. And so you still have your mid-level exception. You still have your cap space. The trade exceptions, I think, expire June 1st. So you'd have to use that before then. But it still leaves the Bulls with a nice amount of assets to get stuff done if they choose to do so. And that is the next order of business for this Bulls team, is to find out. And I started talking about this, the Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, right? Right now, if you look at the things that project to be the biggest check marks for the Bulls in the summer of 2026, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu. What and how much are you going to pay those guys? If you plan on both those guys returning, what is the money for those guys looking like, right? Are you going to negotiate with Coby White, or because Coby White is an unrestricted free agent, do you understand that you don't have as much leeway to negotiate? We'll see what happens there, right? But we know per rumors that Kobe's looking for 30 or more million a year. Ayo Dosunmu, another unrestricted free agent that this season, how he plays in his role, I think is going to be big for him. And what he ends up doing. Does he end up winning the starting small forward position? Is he in that closing lineup and plays big in closing moments to where you feel comfortable with that? Those two of the biggest question marks for the Chicago Bulls. First off, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu. How do you view those guys as part of your future? And if they do not, if the Bulls internally are like, we can only keep one of those guys, do they trade one of them at the trade deadline and take advantage of some of the value that could be there? Those are fair questions to ask too, I think, with all of this. So that's where it sits right now with those two guys. It's probably two of the biggest question marks. But then after that, because of the cap space that you do have, how do you fill out the rest of your roster? Out of the expiring contracts we have, Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins, Dalen Terry, right? Julian Phillips going into, he's not a restricted free agent. They can pick up the option there that they have on Julian Phillips. What do you do? How many of those guys are you returning? And what's the cost of bringing those guys back, right? Because if Julian shows something this year, and of course he's still on a rookie scale deal, that's another player that you get on a cost-effective contract that you can then use to maybe go out and get your center that you want there, right? So it's those type of things that you're asking yourself then at that point in time for the Chicago Bulls. And so, the Dalen Terrys, the Nikola Vucevic, what do you do with those guys, right? But I think that is where you now sit with the Bulls is how do you fill out the rest of the roster? Is Nikola Vucevic still your starting center? Or for a little bit where you have a center in the wings? And that's the other thing. Other than returning your free agents, Coby, Ayo, then what you want to do with the rest of your expiring contracts. Finding the center of the future. How much of that is a focus for this Chicago Bulls team is finding that center of the future? Because if that is one of your major focuses this offseason, there are restricted free agents. We've gone over the restricted free agent centers that the Bulls could target as we get closer to that, more to the midpoint of the season. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But is it in the draft? Are you targeting big men in the draft that you can get in here? And then do you use your expirings? Do you use your future first to move up and get that guy? That's a huge question here, right? Because if you see a guy that you see as your center of the future, how aggressive are you about trying to go out and get that guy, right? Chris Sinek, I believe is how you pronounce it, the junior who's going to be playing in Houston, 6'10", 230 pounds. This is a guy that I have early on my draft board to watch. Now, the problem is that he's projected to be a top 10 pick. And if the Bulls have the season that I think that they can have, they're not going to be picking in the top 10. So, do you get more aggressive about moving some guys to go out and get that center of the future? There are some other centers in this draft, absolutely, that the Bulls could take a look at. There are some other bigs that they could take a look at, but that's kind of the guy that right now, at least, I'm focusing on for the Chicago Bulls. Patrick Ngangba, I believe is how you pronounce it, the center out of Duke. He's going to be a sophomore, 6'11", 250 pounds. He's another guy that could be that center that the Bulls target, that he's right now projected to go more in the 20s. So maybe that's in the Bulls range. How much are you prioritizing getting that center of the future for yourself? That's a huge question here for the Chicago Bulls as well, and one that I can't wait to see how it works out. So that's where things sit right now for the Bulls. The signing Josh Giddey has made things more clear about next year. Now, the question that you have is how many of those things become clear as the season goes on, right? With the backcourt performance, with the performance of players off the bench, with what you can do and how aggressive you can be at the trade deadline. These are all things that matter to the Bulls offseason next year, and we'll see how they're going to go. But let me know if you guys have any other questions on this, please don't hesitate to send in the mailbag or anything in regards to this. I wanted this to be kind of a primer on the Bulls' financial situation, both right now for this season and going into next summer as it stands right now. But if you have any questions on anything, you want to hear more detail on anything, please leave those voicemails, text messages, whatever it is. The number to do that, 773-270-2799. Now, before we go, the Chicago Bulls did make a signing yesterday outside of Josh Giddey. They signed Mohamedou Gueye is how you pronounce it, a 27-year-old. He's been in 11 NBA games over the course of his career, all with the Toronto Raptors during the 2023-24 season. He went undrafted in 2022. He did sign with the Texas Legends of the G League. He's played with the Wizards G League team. Ultimately, this is probably going to be nothing major. This is adding another big, though, and I do think with having Yuki Kawamura there and how he creates and can pass, it could be big there. When you look at it, last year for the Wizards G League team, the Go-Go, he averaged 24 minutes per game. He averaged 11 points, 5.4 rebounds, and 1.1 blocks. He shot the ball 53% from the field, And that was a career low for him in the G League. So there's a guy that's pretty much, has been a pretty, just reliable, just normal big in the G League level. And I think that when you look at the Bulls and how they are really kind of focusing on defense and versatility defensively with wings and things like that, Gee here makes some sense for the Chicago Bulls, right? To go in, and we talked a lot about what I think the Bulls are doing here with the Windy City Bulls this year is that they are building a roster that they can simulate some things that they are doing with the main Bulls, right? You have your playmaker Yuki Kawamura, right? You have Lachlan Olbrich as you kind of your do-it-all kind of forward down there, right? You have guys that have been there before that they've brought in, Makuba, who they brought back as well, right? So you've gotten some guys like that you've brought back in here. I think this is really what this is. This is a way to bring in a guy that is what the style that you're trying to play in the NBA. You're bringing in a guy who can help simulate that. I think they're going to be running very similar systems down with the Windy City Bulls this year. I think that's really all that there is, not to make too much ado about that. So let me know what you guys think on him. Go and watch his highlights. Like, he's really good guy, solid length all over the court. He knows how to use it. He can operate really well as my light goes out. So, that is the sign to end the show. So there you go on that one. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.